Well, hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. I have previously mentioned where it comes to Steven Spielberg, how, and again, restating this even, though I've said it before, it makes me anxious to sort of propose this, but I'm not the biggest fan of Steven Spielberg's children-centric material. And consequently, it means that I inexplicably do not like E.T. And I just don't think the work of Steven Spielberg that sort of more aimed at a younger demographic appeals to me. Consequently, I am much more invested in his adult material. One of my favourite Steven Spielberg films is Bridge of Spies, and of course during this I watched Empire of the Sun, which, yes, it sort of has a foot in both camps, but again, the maturity of the subject matter really appealed to me. And of course there is something about Steven Spielberg, how there's almost, in terms of being a storyteller, you have the aspect of when he's talking, telling sort of his whimsical fantasies, that it's almost like a grandfather telling a grandchild a story, and it's supposed to have that sense of wonderment and magical realism not even magical realism, magic to it. Even, no matter what the film, it's supposed to have that sense of wonder. And when it comes to his adult material, it's more like he's having a frank conversation with adults about history and politics and ideas that bother him and trouble him, and it feels like in both cases he's having a conversation as a filmmaker with the audience. And so when you get to a film like Munich, it is a heavy conversation that Spielberg wants to have, up there with films like Schindler's List, where it's very obvious that he has a lot on his mind in regards to politics and warfare and sort of international relations and sort of the broader philosophical ideas of humanity against the complex everydays of espionage and brutality. I was concerned going into Munich. I had a few concerns. The first being the length, because this is nearly 3 hours long. And as I've said with other near or 3-hour films, there has to be a sense of earned epicness to a story, whether it's a character-based story or whether it's a world-building story. But films like The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, as I said, it made sense to have a film of that length, to chart something of that scale, and yet it didn't live up to it, and so therefore it didn't justify its running time. And so with Munich, not going in with knowing very little about what the film was going to be about, other than the Munich Olympics, I did wonder whether a film of that length just seemed so long and such a heavy subject matter that I was concerned that I was sort of frivolously walking into, as I say, a very heavy conversation that Steven Spielberg wants to have. But the fact is that there is a certain character epicness to it, that the strange thing about Munich is the fact that it is practically not about Munich or the Munich Olympics. That is a setup for the plot, and of course is the vehicle by which motivates the entirety of the story. But the fact that this is a historical event, the fact that the film is based on a book which is then based on the real accounts of, or the real account of one of the team who purportedly led this series of assassinations, it could almost be fiction. I suppose in that respect it's more like Bridge of Spies. There's almost this sense of unbelievability to it, that it's like, this exists in our, well, within a cinematic recreation of our world, but the scale of it is and the implications of it are, of course, incredibly heady and far-reaching. So, of course, it follows. I mean, like I say, the Munich Olympics is barely an incident in it. So you get the first, 15 minutes, which follows the terrorist group Black September, who kidnapped and consequently murdered a group of athletes during the Munich Olympics, as a statement against Israel. So Black September being a group of Palestinian terrorists. But like I said, that only makes up the first 15 minutes. Admittedly, the way that 15 minutes is set out is very interesting, because we aren't given character or a sense of what we're supposed to be taking from this. We're cutting between these terrorists, the news reporting, people reacting, both, of all different nations, whether it's the Americans or the Germans or the or even the Arab, sort of maybe potentially the Palestinians, I understand, but this film does jump from different characters with different languages, and I did sort of struggle to go, okay, this is who I'm following, but there is that sense of representing a historical event through the shock and awe of people observing it, thinking, not knowing how to react to this genuine historical tragedy as it unfolds. As I say, that only makes up the first 15 minutes, though, because from that point on, it feels almost like a fiction film, because then we're introduced to Avner, who is Eric Banner's character. And the point of his character is that he's a family man. He's got a pregnant wife who's so close to giving birth. He's a loyal Israeli. He's in Mossad, and he is tasked with going deep undercover. So it's Black Ops, in regards to, he doesn't exist. The Israelis completely disavow him. But he's going to receive a set amount of money on a monthly basis to essentially run a task force whose role it is to find the members of Black September and assassinate them one by one. And as I say, he is established as sort of very much in your traditional noble hero character, good family man, loyal to his country, a soldier, but there's still something a little wet behind the ears, and a man who we're referred to the fact that he is living in the legacy of a father who was supposed to be incredibly important and heroic. Though that's only touched upon. We only get the tiniest suggestions of that relationship. The father being dead, but the way that people refer to his father. So then, of course, he's immediately sent out. He has to put his team together, and as I say, he's disavowed. They keep saying over and over again, as far as the Israeli government is concerned, he does not exist. And so you have this team of guys who he's just essentially thrown into, and he's told, oh, this is the group of people you will lead. And they're not even quite sure why he's leading them. And so you have, your very traditional narrative team of a bomb maker, a guy who's good with guns, a guy who's a team of 5 in total, and each one sort of serves a purpose in a very sort of heist movie style way. But again, you have that strange relationship between 5 people from all over the world who have been brought together to do this one task. And even though the film is advertised as an action thriller, the action is very, I wouldn't say superfluous, but it's not presented as the focal point of the film. We are given action scenes for each assassination. There is we're almost methodically shown the ways in which they find orchestrate and then carry out the assassinations of these men, depending on sort of who they are, what their role is in the group, and sort of where their lives are following it. So you have someone who's just essentially a poet or a musician, or another guy who's a professor, to the two people who are active, militant type figures. And of course, the assassinations vary depending on what that is. But like I say, the film, Spielberg is not really interested in that, and he doesn't want to make that interesting. He practically cuts away from the assassinations as soon as he is able. He cuts from it because it's not the thing he wants to focus on, and he doesn't want to glamorize warfare, I suppose, or whatever you would call this, the bloodshed that we see. Because then the rest of the film is essentially about how one can become slowly whittled away, and how sort of the meaninglessness of their actions, of this group, and the cruelty of it, and the way that it changes people develops and unfolds to such a point that you kind of no longer remember why they're doing it anymore. So these guys have to ally themselves with sort of mercenary types and underground organisations who send them the information of their targets, and everything's very cloak and dagger. And there is that sense of, we can't trust them. Do we know they're sending us to the right people? Are they going to betray us at some point? Are they already betraying us? You get that sense of constant paranoia. And then on top of that, you also get aspects where they are given the name of one of these people, and then they assassinate them. And as a consequence, there are collateral damage casualties. And of course that affects some of them, some of this team, others it doesn't. And again, it makes the assassinations more visceral, because you have that sense of, they are, this is not clean, this is not efficient, they're trying to make it that, but as a consequence of warfare, that is just what happens. And as a consequence of them doing that, it makes them more disassociated with what they're doing, to the point where they discuss whether what they're doing makes any sense, and whether they can even trust their government or any governments. And they, you can see how people who are sort of these black ops mercenary types become disillusioned, and why there's this sense, how groups like this are made, and how essentially terrorist organisations are made, because they don't have they go from doing it for political reasons or philosophical reasons or patriotism, but as they continue to do it, that gets further and further away from them, so that they're just doing it because that's just what they think they're supposed to do. There's this really interesting scene where they're forced to go into a safe house with a group of POL, which is the Palestinian... it's the name of the terrorist organisation, essentially. It's Palestinian something liberation guys, and of course they're pretending to be not people, assassins of the POL, but Avner has this really interesting conversation with Ali, who is a devoted Palestinian, who tries to make these arguments for why they're doing what they're doing, and how if he continues to, and his children eventually they will reclaim the sort of the promised land. And again, it becomes this sense of, there's very other side of the coin of it, and you get that sense of, this is all kind of meaningless, and it loses as time passes, and as they continue through it, it all loses meaning, to the point where because of the collateral damage, they end up killing people who are politically important for other reasons, and therefore they are themselves put in danger, and members of their team are killed. One of which results in them, out of pure rage, retaliating, finding the killer, and in a scene that I'm not sure ages particularly well, because it's about so she is a contract killer, a freelance contract killer who was sent by who knows who, maybe the KGB, maybe Mossad themselves, maybe whoever. It's never established who she works for, but she honey traps one of this team and murders him. And so the rest of the team find his body, and of course then track her down, where she's on a houseboat in the Netherlands. And then they obviously are preparing to kill her, which she knows, and she's trying different methods to distract or delay them. At which point she does, because she's in a negligee, and of course she removes it and exposes herself again to almost seduce them. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. It's a complex scene that I'm sure there is a lot of meaning and layers to it, but again, 2021 view about the idea of this sort of almost egregious topless scene, it feels, I don't know, I felt uncomfortable, but I don't know if that was the intention, because of course they ignore her and kill her, and there is something quite cruel about it. And of course that the repercussions of that continue, because she is the one quote unquote assassination that they are not, that they're sort of told, well, you weren't supposed to do that, and there's and it affects members of their team psychologically that they did that. And again, I don't know if you're supposed to be as disturbed as I was, or at least in the way that I was. As I say, as the film goes on, you get that sense of disillusionment and that sense of paranoia, so that when they have completed their mission to a certain degree, the ones who are left with post-traumatic stress, paranoid, and completely disconnected. And again, towards the end of the film, and the epic nature of it, the deep psychological nature of it, means that it's not even really about the Munich Olympics. By the end of the film, you've forgotten that that's what this originally was about. And obviously Spielberg is saying something with that. He's wanting to say about how, the meaninglessness of this, and how, there's this whole another level to it, where over the course of the film, as they take out the members of Black September, they're just told, oh well, they've been replaced with these people, and these people are almost worse, more dangerous and unpredictable, and they're told they need to kill some of them, which they do. But again, they're supposed to be going after the original members. And then that comes round back to the point of, well, if they're all just being replaced, was there any point to this? And of course, the people who are replacing them are more radicalised and more willing to do dangerous things. And it sort of shows the futility and also the escalation of this kind of violence. And it's a fascinating film in that capacity. And it does earn the time that Spielberg is taking to tell us that. And again, this is masterful. This is masterful storytelling. It's a really good character piece. And yes, this is definitely what I'm going to be thinking about for a while. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below and share the video, because it's all helping the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 200 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.